Let's say you're not just hanging out in the living room with a tropical plant, but that you actually find yourself in the cliche survival situation of being stuck on a desert island. First off, awesome. If you play your cards right, you might just end up having a weird vacation. But there are a few curveballs the jungle can throw you that you need to be aware of so that you can actually enjoy your tropical stay. My name is Laura Zara. The most important thing is not dying. I'm a survival and backcountry specialist. It is so cozy.
It doesn't taste great, but it'll cure all your problems.
I have a hard time explaining what I do and what my life looks like,
But it's way easier to just show you.
In grizzly country, I tend to up the plus on that, learn what it takes to become decivilized. The coldest I have ever been is in the tropics. I'm pretty sure the expression "when it rains, it pours" exists because of the jungle. You don't get the nice gentle rain, you're having buckets of water dumped on you, and you can't heat up because there's so much water moving across your skin. Being hypothermic has very little to do with the actual temperature of the air. It has more to do with your own body temperature, and you can get really cold really fast in the rain, and when night falls, it can be a huge problem. Shelter is really important in the jungle, and it is your first priority. There are a ton of myths about building a shelter in the jungle. Almost every single book I've ever read says, build a platform. First thing you do, you need to build a platform, and then you build a shelter over the platform. And that's total bull. Basically, if you spend time building a platform, you are not gonna have time to build a waterproof shelter above that. And I don't really care about being off the ground as much as I care about not dying that first night. So forget what you've read, forget the platform. If you're gonna stay in one spot long enough, you can build some crazy elevated platform with a really great shelter over it. But that first night, you are most concerned about having a cover so you can have some protection from the rain. One of the main reasons people say that you need to have an elevated platform is so that you're away from all of the creatures on the jungle floor. While that's kind of true, a lot of those animals, like your insects, ants, snakes, they also climb trees. So they're gonna get to the edge of your platform and there's no magical boundary stopping them. They're just gonna climb right up and climb onto you anyway, so it's not as important as you think it is. Honestly, I've spent a ton of time sleeping right on the jungle floor, and it's not an issue if you sweep the debris away. So what happens is those insects are crawling through all the debris on the floor. They get to the edge where all of a sudden the debris stops and it's not normal for them, so they don't want to go out into that bare patch of ground. If you sweep away the debris, you're in a much better situation. Occasionally you might get a brave ant venturing into the bare ground. In that case, I take a line of ash from the fire and I make a little perimeter, and they don't like crossing that perimeter. It messes with these little sensors they have on their feet, so they stick away from the ash and you do have a magical boundary. As far as water is concerned, yes, there are some jungles where water can be an issue. If you get enough rain or if it's rainy season, you might be in the mud. But oftentimes it's not actually a puddle of water or anything significant that you have to worry about. Putting a few logs down is gonna solve that problem. So for that first night, forget the platform. My go-to shelter for the jungle is called a squirrel's tail. I learned it down in the Amazon, and it's basically designed to be like a squirrel's tail that curls over its body to protect it when there's weather. It takes very little time, you can build it really quickly. You really want to build as small of a shelter as you can get away with because you're going to be able to make that incredibly watertight. If you build a monstrosity, it's really hard to get enough materials to make it completely waterproof. So if you want to stay a while, build your squirrel's tail first, and then you can work on your Taj Mahal.
So I'm digging a hole in these roots to provide a base to put all of these bases of the palm fronds in. Basically, it's easier than just using sand. Sand doesn't have enough force, so by using the existing roots that are already there, I already have a structure that I can put these palm fronds in that's gonna hold it up.
A squirrel's tail shelter consists of a bunch of palm leaves. All of the thick ends, the ends that have been closest to the tree, are in the same spot, and they're all put in the ground and they kind of arch up and naturally want to fold over. And then you have this little cup of protection where the water is going to shed off really nice and you're going to stay completely dry.
You already can barely see any cracks of light coming through the top here, which is a good sign. Water's gonna hit these and run right off. This big rock will support the bases even more so that it doesn't press against the roots and make them dislodge over time.
So there's only like 4 full palm fronds on here, and I'm already getting this protective cone that will keep me alive. Took 10 minutes to make, super low resource. I can tuck back here, have a fire. I'll probably end up pushing these back, creating a little wind wall there. I'll add more to the top. In a really short amount of time, I'm gonna have an awesome shelter. The only problem I sometimes get is these leaves will drip, and I'll dig a little trench so that I have a dry island. And I'm gonna pack more sand and rocks around the base of these to make sure the wind's not gonna affect it. If you don't have palm leaves, you can make a really simple lean-to and then shingle it with some of those huge, broad jungle leaves. A lot of the plants in the rainforest have massive leaves, useful for a ton of stuff, but for shelter, that is gonna be your best friend. If you do have palm leaves, you're in luck because they are so versatile. You can make a ton of stuff from mats made much like the cattail mat that I made in my tiny homes episode. You can make, you can weave them together to create kind of a wind block or a heat reflector. You can make hats to protect you when you go out in the sun. There are so many things you can do with palm leaves. So I hope you have palm leaves, maybe a coconut tree, it'd be great. A ton of stuff you can do with the coconut leaves. You can weave mats with them. You can weave little wind blocks. Basically, weaving is easy. You just do over, under. When in doubt, do over, under. So let's see, over, under, over, under. As you keep doing that weave, eventually you can do the whole thing and have a wind block. It can also act as a heat reflector. Super simple. You can also just harvest these, lash them together, and make a mat like I like to do, where you're just tying cordage and you have a bundle of these leaves, another bundle, and you have a super comfortable mat.
So you can continue that weave all the way up to the top, and then you can add more on either side and make a wall as big as you want.
Between the rain and the humidity, it can be really challenging to make fire, which is your best friend for combating hypothermia. So there's a few extra steps you have to take when making a fire. The first is make your fire its own shelter. I make my fire a little squirrel's tail of its own. Sometimes you have to replace those leaves frequently. The heat from the fire will dry them out and it will get less and less waterproof. You're also most likely gonna need a platform to keep your fire away from the moist ground. So I oftentimes just use sticks layered. You can also use rocks, but depending on what jungle you're in, you may or may not have rocks, so use what you got. If you run a knife along the back of a palm leaf that's dead, you're gonna get all this little fluffy tinder that kind of comes off of it. So that is what I love to use for tinder when I'm in the jungle. A lot of times you can find a palm leaf that's dead on a tree above the forest floor so that it hasn't been soaking up moisture. It's so tiny and so flammable that it works really well.
You make a pile of that and you got some really nice dry tinder.
The palm fiber that is around the base of a lot of palm trees, that is also really great tinder. You can put it out in the sun if you have sun for a few minutes, but it dries so fast that it's really great.
I once used it as a top and I would highly not recommend it. It's like sandpaper.
I think the most important thing about fire in the jungle is that you have to plan ahead. So if you do get that first fire, take a bunch of wood and put it around the fire so that you're drying the wood out. It might even be useful to make some kind of drying rack so that you can suspend the wood and dry it. Try to store it out of the rain and above the ground if you can. Basically preparing so that you have dry wood in case you do get really cold. I like to pre-dry all of my tinder by the fire, and if you have bamboo, which is useful for a million things, I really like making a waterproof bamboo container that I shove dry tinder in and then put a cap on. That way if I get caught out and I don't have dry tinder anywhere, I can find my little emergency tinder container and my fire's pretty much ready to go. Make sure that you really exaggerate the amount of small things that you're gonna burn in your fire. So all of the really tiny sticks, all of the smaller tinder-like material, have more of it than you think you need. That humidity in the air, even if you do have a dry space to start your fire, is going to work against you. So all that little stuff's gonna be super helpful. Smoke can also be a really great way of keeping away insects, but it is not bomb-proof. Mosquitoes actually have these special breathing cavities on their body called spiracles that they take in oxygen through. So smoke gets in the way of them being able to breathe. Smoke will keep mosquitoes away to an extent, depending on where you are. That being said, I was in the Amazon for 3 weeks and the mosquitoes did not care at all about the smoke. They actually seemed to be more attracted to the heat that the fire was putting out than they were repelled by the smoke that it was creating. So I only had a fire when I needed one, when I was cooking food or purifying water. I tried not to have a fire because it just didn't do anything. So I think the most important thing is to be adaptable and to realize if something's not working, it's probably not worth having a smoky fire and almost choking to death every night for zero relief. I think the most important thing in regards to insects and dealing with them is having good mental attitude around it. You have to realize that they're not going to kill you. You need to focus on something else, because if you let that be your focus, it's going to drive you insane, and that actually could kill you. It can also help to know that mosquito or any insect activity generally changes throughout the day and with whatever weather you're having. So knowing that they're not going to stay as bad as they are can be really useful. A lot of times it's sunrise, sunset kind of thing, or after a rain, but it changes in intensity, so maybe that'll make you feel better. As far as getting good water, the first thing I do if I'm on a beach is look for coconuts, because they're gonna have clean water you can immediately drink. It has electrolytes in it, potassium, magnesium, all sorts of good stuff. It's kind of this immediate thing. You don't have to do anything to it but open it to access it. So if you have coconuts, great. The green coconuts have really good water in it.
I'm gonna keep an eye out for that nut. This is all just the fibrous outside. All right, so now that's changing consistency, and that's really hard versus this spongy outside. So that's the base of the coconut. What I'm gonna do is just knock that top right off. And right in there is all my delicious coconut water. So I like just putting my mouth in the hole and drinking it. It's so good, but if you drink too much, you will get diarrhea. So there's that.
Coconuts aren't just good for water, they're also good for food. The green coconuts tend to have this slimy kind of goo on the inside that's really tasty.
All this flesh is also edible. So once you're finished, you can take that flesh. It's really slimy and there's only a thin layer of it. The mature coconuts are the ones that have, well, they have like a dark nut on the outside. The inside's that really thick, meaty flesh. Because this is not a mature coconut, it hasn't developed that thick layer yet. So that's that super thin but delicious young coconut meat.
If you are in a jungle, you most likely are dealing with rain, but there is a good side of that, and that is that you can collect that rain and have fresh rainwater to drink, which also requires no purification. So I like to put big leaves where my shelter is draining, where that water is kind of pouring off, and collect all of that rainwater, and then you can just drink it out of the leaf. Or you can find containers that have washed up on the beach and rinse them out and store your water in there. You can even set up a gutter system if you have bamboo. It's another great use of bamboo. But it's one of the most awful things when you go to any tropical island is that you're gonna be dealing with trash. But in a survival situation, it's actually an awesome thing, as you have all of these materials that you wouldn't have washing up. You can almost check the beach every day and find something new to use. I found a toothbrush once. I boiled it really well, and then I had a toothbrush, and I was very excited about that.
Fantastic.
If you do find fresh water, you can boil that by using containers that you have also found on the beach. You can also do rock boiling, but you want to make sure that you're finding the water above sea level and that it's not brackish water, that it kind of has that wash back from the ocean in it, that it's actually fresh water. And make sure you boil it, because there's a ton of life in the jungle, and a lot of that life is using your water source as a toilet. A lot of times you can find natural springs where water is actually coming out of the ground, and It's not really hard to take a stick and a leaf and kind of make a little spout for that water that's coming out. If the water has been traveling underground for a significant amount of time, it's most likely been filtered by the ground and is safe to drink. It's definitely much better to get your water if it's coming out of a hole in the ground than it is from a place where, monkeys can be overhead and, those things happen. One of my go-tos when I'm in the jungle is to immediately make a pronged stick. A lot of times there's snakes in jungles and you might not know if they're venomous or not. So having a stick to spear them with so that you can catch them to eat them is gonna be great.
Now you're going to carve these into a point. You're gonna wedge sticks in between your cuts to spread these out. Once you have your spear generally roughed out, you're gonna hold it over the coals of a fire so that it pushes all the moisture out of this wood and hardens it. You can take a smooth stone and kind of crush the cells to make it even more hard. And then you can kind of just carve it so that these are pointy and strong. And then you have a nice pokey thing to poke whatever you might want to eat.
You can also use your pronged stick to efficiently collect crabs on the beach. I like moonlit walks on the beach at night because you can go crab poking. Jungles also usually have a lot of vines. You can weave all sorts of cool stuff to aid you in your quest for food, like fish traps or lobster traps. You can make baskets for gathering stuff. This basket shrunk quite a bit when I came out of the humid jungle air, but I actually turned it into a backpack with some rope I found on the beach and was able to gather all my stuff in here and then carry it around and make a really sweet fashion statement. If you're prepared for what to expect in a tropical environment, it's not a bad place to have to survive, especially if you bring a friend. I think I lost my train of thought. Shove it up here, and then you're gonna.